Rohtas Fort rises from the rocky hills of northern Punjab like a silent giant watching over centuries of conquest, resistance, and forgotten power. Long before modern Pakistan existed, before borders were drawn and empires collapsed, this fortress stood as a symbol of control, fear, and strategic genius, built not for beauty but for domination. Rohtas Fort tells a story that is not written in poetry but carved in stone. The location of Rohtas Fort was not chosen by accident. It stands near the ancient Grand Trunk Road, one of the oldest and most important trade routes in South Asia. Whoever controlled this road controlled movement, trade, and armies. This land had seen the footsteps of Alexander the Great, the march of Mauryan armies, and later the arrival of Muslim conquerors. By the 16th century, the region had become the battleground of empires. The story of Rohtas Fort begins with Sher Shah Suri, one of the most brilliant military minds of South Asian history. Sher Shah was not born into royalty. He rose through intelligence, discipline, and ambition. After defeating the Mughal Emperor Humayun, Sher Shah understood one critical truth: power is never secure unless it is protected. He knew the Mughals would return. Rohtas Fort was his answer, unlike Mughal forts designed for royal living. Rohtas was built purely for military control. It was meant to suppress the local Ghakkar tribes who supported the Mughals and to block Humayun's return from Afghanistan. Every stone, every wall, every gate had one purpose: defense. Construction of Rohtas Fort began in 1541. Tens of thousands of laborers were forced to work under harsh conditions. The fort rose quickly, but at a terrible human cost. Historical records mention heavy taxation, forced labor, and punishment for those who resisted. Rohtas Fort was not built with love. It was built with fear, covering an area of over 70 hectares. Rohtas Fort is one of the largest forts in South Asia. Its massive walls stretch more than 4 kilometers, rising as high as 18 meters in some places. These walls were designed to withstand cannon fire, siege attacks, and prolonged warfare. The thickness of the walls tells a story of an age when brute force decided history. The fort has 12 gates, each designed with unique defensive features. These gates were not just entrances. They were traps, narrow passages, sharp turns, high platforms for archers, and openings for pouring boiling oil or molten lead on attackers made every gate a nightmare for invading armies. Among them, the Sohail Gate stands as the grandest, symbolizing power and intimidation rather than elegance. Inside the fort, there are no palaces, no luxurious gardens, no pleasure halls. This alone separates Rohtas Fort from Mughal architecture. It was never meant to be lived in. It was meant to control. The soldiers stationed here lived hard lives, always ready for war. Barracks, storage rooms, water tanks, and watchtowers dominate the interior. Water was the lifeline of Rohtas Fort. Understanding siege warfare, Sher Shah ensured that the fort could survive long periods without external supply. Massive stepwells, known as balis, were carved deep into the rock. These balis could store enormous amounts of water, ensuring survival during long blockades. Even today, these structures reflect engineering intelligence far ahead of their time. Despite its strength, Rohtas Fort never witnessed a full-scale battle. History took an unexpected turn. Sher Shah Suri died suddenly in 1545. Just 4 years after beginning the fort, without his leadership, the Sur Empire weakened. Eventually, Humayun returned and reclaimed his throne. Ironically, Rohtas Fort, built to stop the Mughals, was taken over by them. But the Mughals never truly loved Rohtas. Akbar found it too harsh. Jahangir described it as impressive but uncomfortable. The fort slowly lost its importance as Mughal power stabilized. Nature and time began their quiet invasion. Stones cracked, walls aged, silence replaced marching armies. Yet Rohtas Fort refused to disappear. It stood as a reminder of a different kind of rule, one based on military strength rather than artistic beauty. It represents a rare architectural blend of Afghan and South Asian styles. Heavy stone masonry, minimal decoration, and functional design dominate its structure. Rohtas Fort also witnessed cultural layers being added over time. Mosques were built inside, local villages developed near its walls. The fort became part of the landscape, not just a military base. People lived under its shadow, farming, trading, and surviving as history moved forward. In 1997, Rohtas Fort was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The world finally recognized what had stood silently for centuries, not because of gold or beauty, but because Rohtas represents the raw truth of power that empires rise not only through culture, but through control. Today, when you walk through Rohtas Fort, the silence is heavy, the wind moves through broken gateways. The stones seemed to whisper stories of soldiers who never returned home, rulers who feared losing power, and a world where survival depended on walls and weapons. Rohtas Fort is not just a monument, it is a lesson. It reminds us that history is not always glamorous. Sometimes it is brutal, sometimes it is unfair, but it is always important to remember, because when we forget history, we repeat it.